Julia Formatine, and today I'll be talking about two digestive organs, the pancreas and the liver, and the role that they play in the digestive system, the digestive process itself. So we'll start with the pancreas. The pancreas is a long organ that runs along the back of the stomach and lies in the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. This organ functions as both an exocrine and an endocrine organ. The exocrine gland part of it secretes digestive enzymes and sodium bicarbonate into ducts. And the endocrine gland secretes the hormones insulin and glucagon into the blood. These hormones are secreted by islet cells, which are clusters of cells within the pancreas. Here's a diagram of the pancreas, well, of a couple different digestive organs. You can see the pancreas, its location within the abdominal cavity. You can see it lying on top of the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine right here, behind the stomach. The pancreas functions in both hormonal and digestive ways. The hormones, glucagon and insulin, secreted by the endocrine gland, regulate the level of glucose in the blood. And digestive enzymes secreted by the exocrine gland break down food in the duodenum, all the macromolecules, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and acids. Here we'll focus on the digestive function of the pancreas. Pancreatic enzymes are released in response to distension of the small intestine, presence of food in the small intestine, neural signals, and the gastrointestinal hormone cholecystokinin. The enzymes travel down the pancreatic duct into the bile duct, and while they're doing this, they're actually in an inactive form, and then they're activated when they get into the duodenum. This is so that the enzymes don't actually digest the pancreas itself, and they just start working once they get to the duodenum and start, breaking down the food that is in there. This activation process begins when enteropeptidase converts the inactive trypsinogen to its active form of trypsin, and then trypsin converts the other pancreatic enzymes. They're called zygomins in this form. It converts it to their active forms. The function of the enzymes is to break down macromolecules, which is obviously a very important part of digestion. So pancreatic proteases, such as trypsin and chymotrypsin, digest proteins. Pancreatic amylase digests carbohydrates, and pancreatic lipase digests fat. And then sodium bicarbonate, which is also released by the exocrine gland, neutralizes stomach acid in the small intestine. Stomach, or gastric acid, functions to break down food in the stomach, but an excess amount of acid can cause stomach ulcers and nausea, so the sodium bicarbonate plays an important role. And now we'll talk about the hormonal function of the pancreas. So there's two types of cells in the pancreas, beta and alpha cells. And beta cells produce the hormone insulin, which enables cells to absorb glucose from the bloodstream. Alpha cells produce the hormone glucagon, which stimulates the breakdown of stored glycogen into glucose. And the pancreas is sensitive to glucose levels in the blood and works to monitor them. So when glucose levels rise, which would happen after eating a meal, insulin is released in order to return blood glucose levels back to normal. Insulin stimulates the uptake of glucose by the liver, storage of glucose in liver cells, and uptake of glucose by tissues. Now, when blood glucose levels fall, glucagon is released, and glucagon stimulates the liver to break down stored glucose in the form of glycogen and causes blood sugar levels to rise back to normal. Now we'll talk about the liver, and the liver is a gastrointestinal organ located in the upper right of the abdominal cavity. It sits on top of the stomach, the right kidney, and the intestines. It's made up of two main lobes, which consist of 1,000 lobules. These lobules connect to small ducts that then connect with larger ducts to form the common hepatic duct. The common hepatic duct transports bile from the liver to the gallbladder and the duodenum via the common bile duct. This shows the location of the liver within the abdominal cavity. And here's common bile duct running up in here, common hepatic duct, and the gallbladder. The liver has a lot of functions, and one of the most important is the production of bile. Bile is a non-enzymatic solution made up of bile salts, bile pigments, and cholesterol. Hepatocytes, or liver cells, secrete bile, and then it travels in the hepatic ducts to the gallbladder where it's stored. And it stays there for a little bit, and then when a meal that contains fat is consumed, the gallbladder contracts, and this contraction sends bile to the small intestine through the common bile duct. When bile salts reach the second part of the small intestine, which is the ileum, they are reabsorbed by cells and sent back into blood circulation. Now, some of those salts do make it to the colon, and those ones are converted back to bile acids and then recycled back to the liver. And this recirculation of bile salts is very important to fat digestion because the salts break down the coarse lipids into smaller, more stable particles that can be digested. So here's a diagram just showing what was explained about bile salts and how they are released and then returned back to circulation. Another function of the blood is that it filters, or of the liver, is that it filters blood. And at any given time, the liver holds about 1 pint of the body's total blood supply. So when blood leaves the stomach and intestines, it passes through the liver, which then processes and filters the blood. And it does a couple different things. First, it removes bacteria from the blood. It processes hemoglobin to distribute its iron. It cleans drugs, alcohol, and other toxins out of the blood. And it also removes compounds such as hormones. This diagram shows the filtration of blood through the liver. So everything enters through the renal artery here. And after filtration by the nephron, the filtered blood leaves through the renal vein and is returned to the bloodstream. The toxic substances that were filtered out leave through the ureters down here, which empty into the bladder, and then the toxins can be excreted through urination. Carbohydrates are absorbed in the bloodstream and then delivered to the liver, which metabolizes these carbohydrates. So excess glucose is stored in the liver as glycogen, and glycogen can be broken down and released when the body needs it, such as during exercise or during times of fasting. This diagram just shows how carbohydrates are broken down and kind of just sums up the actions of the pancreas and the liver. So as you can see, starting up here, after you consume a meal, blood glucose levels increase and the pancreas responds by releasing insulin. This insulin stimulates uptake of glucose by muscle cells and the liver, and in these places it's converted to glycogen. So since glucose has been taken up, it's been removed from the blood, so blood glucose levels drop to more normal levels. And if we look down here at this other scenario, when blood glucose levels are low, the pancreas releases glucagon, which stimulates the breakdown of glycogen into glucose in the liver, and then glucose is released into the blood, thus raising blood glucose levels. So that's just a pretty brief summary of the two organs, the liver and the pancreas, and the roles that they play in digestion.